Hello, everyone. Welcome to Connecting with Curry show, and I'm your host, Talha Malik. How's everyone doing with the recent stay-at-home order in Ontario?
It's been not too bad, been learning to cook at home, getting used to my surroundings at home. It's been kind of crazy, but getting used to the new normal.
Nice, good
And
to hear that.
definitely enjoying time with family. I guess we all can relate to the fact that this has brought us all closer since we're spending time together and also further apart, as being together is also really annoying at times.
Very true.
All right, amazing. Good to hear. So, to all our listeners, today's podcast topic is unique and very close to my heart as living in such a diverse city as Toronto. I interact with people with different cultures and traditions. Without boring my audience further, I would like to introduce today's topic and three guests that I have. Today's topic is connecting identity and culture. Further on, we'll be discussing identity and food, traditions, culture, and integration. So, in today's guest panel, I have three of my colleagues, and the first one is Fatima Rabani.
Hi, my name is Fatma. I'm a sociology researcher and I mainly focus on sociology of food. My research kind of surrounds the idea of how our environment and our cultures and traditions and everything we're exposed to and grew up with, how they are creating our identity and essentially what the foods we enjoy and how that takes part in all of that.
Definitely. I really liked your recent research article that you posted about correlation between Western and ethnic food. It was quite interesting to read that article.
Thank you. I think a lot of people actually fail to recognize that there's a middle ground of people who are bringing culture from back home and coming and migrating into this new community and how difficult that is and essentially shapes who we are.
Perfect. Amazing. And definitely we'll be discussing more today.
For sure.
And my next guest is, she goes by the name Laya. And how you doing, Laya?
Hi, Taha. I'm doing great. So excited to be on the show today. So excited to hear what my colleagues also have to say today. It's a great honor to be here.
Definitely. Likewise, I saw your pictures of animal killing in the Time magazine a year ago that you took some photographs in Africa. It was
Yeah,
interesting to
that
see
was
that.
actually,
Mhm.
thank you. That was actually my motivation to become a vegetarian, actually. The wrongful killings of animals. And it just really was very hurtful to me to see animals go through that. We're all beings. So that definitely was one of the pictures that really drove me to become a vegetarian. And yeah,
Quite
looking
interesting to
forward.
learn that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Now I'm going to move on to my last guest of the panel, and her name is Fatima. Hello, sorry. My apologies. It's Shanze Faisal. How are you doing, Shanze?
No worries. I'm great. How are you, Talha?
I'm pretty good. Thank you so much. Thanks for asking.
No worries. So again, my name is Shantae Faisal. I'm a journalist for Toronto Star newspaper, and I will be reporting live from Pakistan. So this is a great opportunity for me to indulge in all the foods and show you guys what it's like over here. Very excited to be on the show and to be able to showcase that.
Thanks for joining in. I know it's the timings does not really match up, and that was a hard part. And how's the weather there? Is it still really hot, as I remember from my last visit in summer?
Yeah, I know you're a Pakistani as well, and it is hot in here. It's about 40 degrees, and I mean, it's going to reach 40 degrees. Right now it's 30. I'm already dreading the 40. But so far, it's not too bad because during this time, we get to taste all these amazing fruits that come out. And as the season progresses, there's going to be mangoes, which I'm very excited about. Pakistani mangoes are the absolute best. And again, enjoying the food in the hot weather with your family and everyone around, and being able to sit outside and enjoy all the amazing things that you can have here. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you mentioned mangoes, and that's actually one of my favorite fruits. And I can't really get the same quality in here in Canada. It's normally Mexican mangoes. So yeah, I really miss those old days where I used to eat mangoes quite a lot in summer. So definitely looking forward to my next trip. Thanks for that. All right, so I'm gonna move on to my first question, and that question will be to Fatima. What are the some ways food shapes identity?
S- So I actually was my family and I are from India. To be specific, it's the state of Karnataka. If you look at the second picture, it's right next to the Arabian Sea,
Mhm,
more specifically Bangalore. And that's where my family was raised and born, and that's where my siblings were born too.
mhm,
And in 2001, when we were planning to move to Canada, a lot of people told my mom that they would lose their culture and that the kids would lose their culture and not like the food and all of this. And one of the ways that she kind of helped make sure that Indian culture was still important to us was cooking cultural foods. And that's because food also not only tells us who we are as people, but it also provides us with the language of culture, right? And so
mhm,
on the weekends, she would often cook foods like idli. And this is a steamed batter consisting of fermented lentils and rice, all put together and steamed, and you eat it with chutney and sambar, which are like ground up coriander and mint leaves, and sambar is like a lentil stew
mhm.
almost. Um,
Looks very interesting, though. I never tried this before, and I hope I can find somewhere in
yeah.
Canada to try this amazing dish.
There's actually so many places
Yeah.
in Canada that you can eat it from. It's really good. I think there's like a restaurant right next to Mississauga called Udupi Madras Cafe, and you can find that. And we would also eat dosa, which you can also find, which is like a thin batter, which is made
Mhm,
out of rice and fenugreek, and you soak it and you blend it, and you make it. It's like almost paper thin. It's like a
mhm,
crepe, but way thinner than a crepe. And that's another staple
mhm.
in every South Indian home.
Seems very similar to the pancake, or since I'm from Pakistan, it's more like a seems to me or like a paratha
Right.
or chapati with the oil in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I think chapati is a little, I think paratha is a little thicker because we have
Mhm.
paratha, we call it like roti.
Okay,
But this is way thinner. It's like super crispy too. It's really good.
so thinner than a pancake. Wow.
Yeah, thinner than a
I would
pancake.
have to just jump in because being a part of, the culture of Sri Lanka, like we definitely also eat dosa as well. And I don't know about you, but I just feel like the crispier, the better because that crisp is amazing.
Yeah, that's why try to make it as thin as possible, and it usually gets really
Exactly.
big too.
And I also like a lot of ghee on it. I know that we put ghee on it to make it sort of I don't know, the taste of it, to just add that ghee on top just tastes, oh my God, looking at these pictures just remind me of my childhood and
Mhm,
eating idli and dosa. And I think that's amazing that you brought that up.
Honestly, and because AJ Bailey actually discusses how food is kind of like a mechanism to connect our immigrant identity and maintain it with our homeland and kind of make links to it too. And alongside Indian food, because I was raised in Canada, sorry about that, alongside Indian food, our home actually also depicted Western influence. So, for example, my sister and I would prefer to drink almond milk and oat milk, which in Indian culture, cow's milk is usually what is the norm. That's typically what everyone drinks. No one really knows anything
mhm.
different, right? But because Canada is such a diverse country, the development of providing ethical and alternative food choices is kind of a way to accommodate other people and other cultures and diet restrictions. So when we do interact with different cultures and different foods, such as drinking oat milk and almond milk, we still kind of hold on to our culture and let it influence how we see and enjoy food and develop our tastes for it.
Quite interesting to learn that. I've never tried almond milk or whatnot.
Mhm.
Always been stuck with the cow milk, as you mentioned. It's like almost tradition to
Right.
drink that. Uh,
Exactly.
I would love to try maybe one day almond milk and
Really good. I would actually suggest oat milk because I
oat milk
think
is
it's
better.
more like regular cow's milk than almond
Like it
milk.
resembles with the taste,
Yeah, it's like
right?
thicker and it's better. to be
I
honest.
think the culture, like just like being from like India and like seeing Canada, like in India, we're not really exposed to seeing like almond milk and like oat milk. And even like growing up in Canada and being in my immigrant household, like I was never introduced to oat milk and almond milk until, going to school and, seeing other kids that are like
Hmm.
different ethnicities from me drinking this. And I'm like, whoa, like this is a whole different, kind of milk. Like this is something that I'm not used to seeing. So like I totally agree with how the influence has definitely made an impact on what you eat.
100%.
I would say that a really big influence for me in regards to even oat milk and these different kinds of milk was social media. I would see these different influencers use milk in different ways. For example, you would use this like oat milk, almond milk, and use that as a healthier alternative. So I think
Hmm.
nowadays social media has a really big impact on what you consume and the way you even use the ingredients, which I think is really fun and exciting because you can find healthier alternatives to things that might not have suited you as well.
Right. Very.
Interesting. All right. So I'm going to move on to my next question is how did the food you grew up in eating shape who you are?
So there's many different ways that food actually shapes identity, and this is kind of talking in a Western perspective. It's kind of due to the diversity of Canada, which allows for like the mixture and use of foods across different cultures. So again, coming back to what I said before, almond milk is not
Hmm.
a typical food in my culture. However, it's quite common for many individuals in Canada, and this influence allows individuals like myself to try out different foods, and it kind of creates a habitus, which is essentially how we reflect and prefer certain taste, and it becomes internalized and converted into a disposition that generates meaningful practices. So for example, me being Indian, that changes how I react to food and the things I prefer because of
Hmm.
my culture. And for example, in Indian culture, we eat a lot of spices and different flavors, and every dish, it's not particular to one flavor. It's kind of a lot of different flavors coming together in one dish.
So you go
Um,
beyond pepper and other general
right, exactly. Like garam
spices.
masala, turmeric, like
Hmm.
all of those flavors are put into one singular dish. And that's just how we enjoy food. So when I'm looking at food and my preferences, it's always to add more spices and chili powder and things like that. And AJ Bailey actually discusses the migrant suitcase as a metaphor for how social remittances are collected and transported and transformed, and how migrants they carry with them a variety of cultural norms as well as diet and eating habits. And then they bring into the other countries their skills and their foods and their cultures and traditions from back home and develop it in the country they settle in. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and this allows for other individuals to learn and grow, right?
Hmm. So where do you get your spices from? It must be hard to find them as you would in India.
When we first moved to Canada, it was a little hard because there wasn't a lot of Indian population here. But as the years go and like more people migrate and it becomes more popular, you can
Hmm.
find like an Indian grocery store. There's something called Mr. India right down my street, and that's where we get our spices and things. And even bigger stores are now starting to provide for other cultures and things like that, and having like a section, like an Asian section for our spices and things like that.
Even I think Asian grocery stores are picking up quite recently. I was
Mhm.
looking into some articles that there was a Cello Fresh Go. Cello means come or go to that store. So they were, I think, catering towards the ethnic food. And also there's Iqbal Halal Foods. They opened a second chain, I believe, last year in Mississauga as well. So getting quite popular with the ethnic foods.
Right. And for example, sorry, continue.
No, no, sorry. I was just saying that I think it's really interesting that bigger food chains are adapting to the environment and the geography that they're located in. For example, Tola Freshco is near my area, which is Brampton, and it's quite heavily populated with South Asian
Mhm.
people. And I just find it really interesting that instead of having a separate section, they adapted their whole store to that
Right.
location to have to cater to that community and allow those people to feel comfortable and accepted. I feel that's a really big way for them to show that, hey, we see that you have needs and we want to cater to them. How can we best help you? And they've kind of adapted to that environment.
Right, 100%. And for example, the picture you see on the screen, the other day I made pasta. And usually pasta is not like a food filled with a lot of spices,
Hmm.
right? It usually has like garlic or onion powder and
Yeah,
things,
Italian, just like Italian food, for
Italian
example.
spices, things
Hmm.
like that. But because me and my family, we have developed a love for more flavor and spice and things like that. We added more flavors such as turmeric, we added garam masala, chili powder. I think we added ginger garlic paste, and this kind of illustrates how migrants bring their own foods and traditions and essentially mix it in with the foods they see in the countries they migrate into, which creates a whole new identity, which is a mix of the two countries through food.
Definitely. It was quite interesting to learn about your journey in Canada and how you incorporated two cultures and synchronized with a lot of spices and whatnot. Thank you for that. Now
Sorry, I
I'll
think it's. I just want to jump in. Like what you guys were both talking about,
continue.
Shanze and Fatima. Like, I think it's really up to the younger generation, like us, where I think we're really starting to embrace our culture a lot more.
Mhm.
Growing up being immigrants from like a different country and coming
Mhm.
into more European based country, like it's like you don't want to interfere or overshadow the dominant country you're in. So we learn to hide our foods. I know going in lunch as a younger kid, like I would hide my foods because I'd be ashamed to show what I had for lunch, my ethnic food. And now I feel like we're starting to westernize those and have fusions, and we're starting to embrace them. And now food chains are opening up that, have a Western and Indian fusion to it. And I feel like it's really up to, these first generation people who are starting to embrace our culture. And like it even starts in the household of yours, just you making the pasta. It just shows like
Mhm.
your initiative to mix both identities and create this different identity that
Mhm.
sort of mixes both in them, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, like I will build upon that. Like, as millennials, it's our ethnic millennials, it's our responsibility to not be ashamed of our food and be more open about it. Like, share with other cultures and introduce those dishes to them. I'm pretty sure as of now, a lot of Western people would know what chicken biryani is. Biryani is a pretty common term now. So it's just up to us. We have to take the lead on that, try to like, introduce them to different dishes or how they can change or adopt to more spices in their Western dishes.
Very true.
Agreed.
All right, perfect. So that was some of our Indian culture given by Fatima. So thank you so much, Fatima, for that.
No problem.
And now I will move on to with my next guest, Laya, who represents the Sri Lankan culture. And my first question to you will be, what do you think that most prominently is connected with food and your country? Tell me about your experience when you were growing up.
So yes, I am from Sri Lanka, born and raised, and we're also called the pearl of the ocean. If you notice the map, the island sort of looks like a pearl, right? So
Mhm.
before being named Sri Lanka, we were actually called Ceylon tea. So we were known for exporting teas and making teas, Ceylon tea in Sri Lanka. So we sort of attached that identity to us of the country that makes tea. And as we progressed, we changed our name to Sri Lanka, but we will forever hold that identity of having tea,
Mhm.
embraced in our culture. So I think that's very important to bring up, and you talked about how what's most prominently connected with food in my country. And
Yes.
I would definitely have to say that food is a sacred item in my country. So growing up, I would definitely see more food at the temple than my own house. And because I've seen the food so much at the temple, I've learned to create an idea that these two concepts are related to each other and that they intertwine for a bigger message. And that message is spirituality. So there's a spiritual realm that's connected with food, and it symbolizes message from God, as well as food having healing techniques in them that are beneficial for the mind and body. So many of the people, including myself, we're Hindu, and you'll see a lot of people in Sri
Hmm.
Lanka who are majority Hindu, and we follow a lot of prayers, and these we also do fasting. So these days sometimes they go for weeks, days, months. It's typically per god. They have their own set of dietary restrictions, when to eat food and what to eat. So this sort of timeline and what to eat and where to eat is how we sort of repay and reward God, and sort of get our blessings from God by following these rules
Hmm.
that are given upon us. So you mentioned me growing up and my experiences.
Yeah.
So seeing these experiences, I watched. My mom was very religious, so every day was a different day dedicated to God, and I would see her, break her fast at a certain time, and then eat certain kind of foods. And she wasn't, as a Hindu, we're not allowed to eat beef on Fridays, or we're not technically even supposed to be eating beef, as cow is one of our biggest spiritual identities. Sort of, we all really respect cows. So even
Hmm.
when Fatima brought up the idea of how everybody drinks cow milk in India, and like the idea of almond milk not being sort of present, I totally agree, because we worship the cow so much. We feel that the milk that comes from cow is a very spiritual item that we're receiving. So a goddess herself, Annapurna, she is a Hindu goddess of food and nourishment, and her name actually in Sanskrit means to be possessed with food. So,
Hmm.
being so educated on my religion, I noticed the ties between how food is related to that, and this concept of sacredness is in food. It's not only channeled in Sri Lankan culture, but I also noticed in indigenous culture that's also very vibrant. As I went to a seminar, and that seminar was about food and identity, and we looked at this idea sort of in the lens of indigenous culture.
Hmm.
So, looking through this lens, I was able to recognize how we have many similarities, and how food is a very prominent item in their culture and their traditional beliefs. And we both do use food as a healing technique. I also learned that in indigenous culture, they don't look at food as a commodity. It's
Hmm.
not for profit, and it's more of a service item, which I also think has a relationship between both cultures. And I also think it's very interesting how they would like to see food as service and not profit. As in, like, different cultures, we see food as a way to make money, or food to get exposure. So I think it's really cool how these both two cultures look at food as a service for the benefit of one.
It's quite interesting to see the commonalities in between two different cultures in two different continents. Thank you for bringing that information up.
For sure.
And now I will move on to the next question to you will be, where do you think that all this knowledge of food and your culture comes from?
Well, honestly, if you were to go and walk up to somebody from Sri Lanka, and just because we're talking about the idea of food and culture, if you say, "Hey, where did you learn this recipe from, or where did you learn this from?" 9 times out of 10, they're gonna say, "Oh, I learned this from my parent. I learned this from my grandma. Somebody older, someone has taught me." That's, even if you
Hmm.
ask that older person, it's just gonna be a same cycle, and it's that generational practice that we all follow through with the same traditions and recipes. It's just that we all follow through it in a cycle, and I think that's really cool. And sort of, this term is called reflexivity, and it's basically the practice of reflecting one's knowledge and experiences and positions in the world as a means of informing future actions and attitudes. So when I talk about these generational practices, I'm talking about, for example, a woman's first menstruational cycle. When a girl gets her period for the first time in Sri Lanka, um, the first automatic reaction to that is the foods that they're going to give. So as you see in the slides, like,
Hmm.
fenugreek is definitely something that they will sort of mash and make like a tea out of. The other one is yam, purple yam. That's also really good for your body and stomach aches. I remember my mom making me
Hmm.
take shots of sesame seed oil, which was honestly disgusting. But, it was the benefit for, the tummy aches and all the things that we
Hmm.
go through getting your period for the first time. These are all different foods that's played a role in my childhood. And for sure, when I have a daughter, I'm going to put these practices on her and tell her, these are things that my family and culture, this is what we eat to feel better during this, time in our lives. And I feel like you should do it as well. It's just a part of our culture to put these practices on, our kids. And hopefully our kids will put these practices on their kids to show that there is a generational flow of traditions and ideas
Hmm.
being passed on.
Yeah, hopefully, the future generations will carry on the traditions that the other older generations have already done. So hopefully, we'll continue on, and as role models yourself. So hopefully, it will be like that. Um,
Yeah, I see that with our culture as well. With Pakistani culture, it's very much based on, oh, your grandmother used to do this, so that's why you should do this. And as a kid, you're questioning why. Why should I do
mhm,
something that I don't really understand or I don't really have a connection with? But I feel like as you grow older, you start to see why they used to say to do
mhm,
those things, right? You see the benefit in them as you grow older. And I feel like it's the same with us. Like we have so many things that we've learned from our older generations and people that we haven't even met. That's
mhm.
how powerful the reflexivity is, right? It really does carry through. And my little sister, she's going to be doing the same things that I'm doing.
Mhm.
And she does
Mhm.
it just by seeing me doing them, right? That's just how it's practiced. So I'm really glad you brought up that point because I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, and I feel like food itself, like it's something that you can't really manipulate. It's like this food is good for this part of the body. So, we
Mhm.
do make our different fusions. And as Fatima talked about, westernizing it, we can definitely make a westernized version of whatever food benefits our body, but it's still the idea of that food helping
Mhm.
us, restore or heal has been passed on a generation. And I think that's really cool how that's being followed through.
Yeah, a lot of remedies are available, from your older generations. In my culture, probably in yours too. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a saying that you should get almonds, you should eat those because it makes your brain smarter, right? So there are a lot of different remedies. I
And
don't
just
know
to,
if
like
those
just to
work,
ask you,
but
where did you get that from? Like, who told you that?
yeah,
That
exactly. Like, it's just coming on from generations to generations, right? So
exactly.
I don't know if it works, but it's there.
You
Like a
still
lot
do
of
them.
people follow.
You hope it works.
That's
That's how
funny.
I see it. Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna move on to the last question for Laya. You said earlier that food is involved with being sacred. Can you tell me where you can see this?
For sure. Like as I mentioned, I've seen more food at the temple than home. So, I think this environment where the temples where we go and we pray, we see what happens there. And, these temples, you see them often giving food to God. The God is surrounded by food. And in an article that I read, it talks about how there's a historical relationship between religion and food. And some a common thing that is done in temples is food offerings from God. So an essential food that you'll see in every single temple and every single religious event, especially like festivals and weddings and stuff, is rice, uncooked and unbroken rice. And rice symbolizes prosperity, bounty, and fertility. So we surround ourselves with these uncooked and unbroken rice for these spiritual beliefs that we have. And going to an Indian wedding, you'll see there's a whole like segment dedicated in the wedding where the bride and groom is placed in the center, and everybody and every single one of the guests will go and put some rice on them, as you can see in these pictures.
Hmm.
It's a symbol of our culture and what we believe God will do to bless us. So you also see that in weddings and a rice eating ceremony for a child. So this is when the child is sort of embarking their adulthood. They are introduced to solid foods through rice. So
Mhm.
you can show how rice plays a role in these different events, spiritually and symbolically. Um, I don't know if you guys are aware of pujas. They're sort of group prayers.
Mhm.
Um, before we eat the food, in technically in my family's puja, like we give the food to God first. We make sure that God blesses the food. They eat first, because once again, it's worth thanking them for blessing us with this food. So obviously, as a thank you, we let them eat first. And then these meals are often placed on banana leaves,
Mhm.
which is another thing that comes from our ancestors. They eat food on a banana leaves, and even our goddesses and gods, they eat, and it's sort of like, I would say, sacred, because we eat with our hands as well, and it's for using our god-given abilities, and god-given leaves and natural items that we're using to nourish ourselves. And I think that comes from the idea of ancestry and tradition, and once again, generations passed on from the generation before. So things like these, ideas like this is what makes food so sacred in our culture, because it has the relationship with God, and how what God does to the food, and how we understand where food comes from, and how grateful we should be, and how blessed we should be for it, and how we should treat food. I remember growing up, I was not like, you will never see a Sri Lankan person
Mhm.
cross their legs, sort of have their foot on top of another and eat. It's shown as disrespectful.
Mhm. It's
Yeah.
actually
So,
clever that you talk about the banana leaves, because even in my culture, if you go to the villages, that's essentially their plates. They wouldn't eat on anything else, and they eat on their with their hands too. And sometimes they all like sit around one like sort of,
one banana leaf, right?
yeah, and they share all the foods, and that's like how you kind of make conversations and develop like relationships with each other, because you're all sharing and talking over one plate, which is
And
really
exactly as Shanze talked about before, like it's the whole, like, you get to eat with your family, and it just makes the experience so much better. And I think eating with family is like definitely a big part of my culture. It's the togetherness and the unity, that we all share in our culture. And I feel like that not only in my culture, but in all of your cultures as well, we really treat like unity and eating together as a very, staple part in our cultures.
For us, it's even sharing the same glass. We say that that gives you more abundance in what you're drinking or eating, which, again, I think it's similar to the banana leaf concept, where you're eating together and that brings you blessings. So I think we have a lot of comparisons that we can make between our traditions while eating food and pertaining to food.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laya, for introducing all these amazing topics to us. And some of them were quite eye-opening and gave us a lot more new topics to consider in our daily lives. So thank you so much, Laya, for that.
No
So,
problem.
so now I will move on to our last topic or culture, which will be discussed by Shanze. Hello, Shanze. I know you're in Pakistan. How you doing?
Hey, I'm great. It is 3:40 a.m. over here, and I'm joining you guys at, I don't know what time it is over there right now, but
It is 6:46 p.m. So thank you so much. It
yes,
means quite a lot that you are awake early in the morning to
not
be
at
in this
all.
podcast.
I'm excited to be on the show. That's why I stayed up.
Thank you.
So, I am from Pakistan, as I mentioned earlier. I'm right down there near the water, that city, Karachi. That is the port of Pakistan. So we have a very live, vibrant culture over here. And a lot of it revolves around food. A thing that we all say whenever we're talking to each other, it's like, oh, what should we do? Maybe we should go get food. That's like the biggest thing you can do here. It's a really big part of daily life. And it just really is a very important part of the Pakistani Karachi culture, especially. So if you see on the next slide, these are our famous dishes. We have biryani on the left, nihari on the top. We have different types of butter chicken curry, we have spinach, we have all these different types of foods that are absolutely out of this world, very, very spicy, which adds to the flavor. And it just honestly altogether is a really fun experience to even eat and try because of all the diversity. So we do have ancestral roots in India. So that's why we may have a lot of paths crossing there when it comes to our flavors. But as a country, we've developed our own flavors. But the most interesting thing is, even as cities, we have different flavors, different ways of making things. Like our sister cities will have a different way of interpreting the food
Mm-hmm.
than we may do. Right now, as I'm in Pakistan, I was traveling around in the cities. I went to a city called Lahore. I went to Islamabad, and these are different cities, and they had foods that were so delicious, but they were so different from what I have here in Karachi. So I find it quite fascinating how different areas of the same country have different takes on
Mm-hmm.
the same type of food, even.
And just
So
to add on it, like, maybe I think Nihari is more like a dish in Karachi, like it's more a lot more popular there
yes, yes,
rather
it is.
in Lahore and Islamabad area. So you're totally right on that.
Yeah, it's totally very like the biryani. We're known for our biryani, for example. And over there, I tried it and it wasn't as good, I must say. I have to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely think ours is better to me because I'm so used to the tastes and the flavors. And again, like as I mentioned, it's definitely very different across the board. And we found a way of kind of including those flavors and those dishes in Canada. When we're back home, we try to find restaurants and we try to find places that have these authentic tastes. And we are always on the hunt. We are always out looking for the next best thing. And I think, again, as Fatma and Leah mentioned, there is an increase in accessibility to these flavors. So I think we're getting there. I think we're definitely developing flavors closer to home. And that's what makes it easier to be far away for so long. I'm here for 4 months, so I'm going to be enjoying all these foods. But when I go back, of course, I'm going to miss a bit of home. And food is for me a way to connect with my roots and connect with my culture, identity. It really is an integral part of who I am. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that. Now, moving on to the next slide, I would love to talk about desserts. I'm a really big, I have a huge sweet tooth. Honestly, I must admit, it's really a downfall at the same time, but I can't help it. I love it. And on the top left, we have gulab jamuns, we have kheer, we have faluda, we have jalebis. These are, I'm sure they sound like crazy names, but they taste fantastic. Over here, the authenticity of all of these dishes just add to the experience. I would say food to me is also an experience. It's about how you're feeling at the moment, how the food makes you feel, and how you are feeling when you're around it with your family. Again, family is a really big part of who I am. Like if you see on the next slide, a really big way that my family and I sit together and like get connected is tea time. We love our tea. Again, like Leah mentioned, you guys are known for your tea. I would love to try that. And I would love for you to try ours. It's a really delicious take on tea. It's so different. It's so unique. I feel like we can have it as many times in the day. We usually have it 3 to 4 times. So I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
I was about to mention that, like, I'm a big TV drinker, maybe not as comparable as Pakistani would. I drink twice a day. But one difference I want to make point out that, like in Western cultures, it's hard to make a proper steep tea, which you would find in stalls or back home in Pakistan. You would use normally like orange peacock or English breakfast tea bags. So those are not very close to what my guest is talking about. So those are very good tea that you should try if you can find anywhere in Canada.
Just to jump in here, like I
Exactly.
really want to know what's your favorite kind of tea?
My favorite tea is some ethnic tea. I get it from Iqbal Halal Food. It's actually a Pakistani company called Tapal Danedar, and they make a pure black tea with pure leaves, which I'm just like, fond of. I can't really find it anywhere. I've tried Lipton and other Unilever brands, but I can never go back to those. So I will just stick with whatever my ethnic tea bags are.
I love that you stick to that sort of, your culture's kind of tea. Being in Toronto, everyone's so obsessed with like green tea and orange pico, and like they haven't known this different realm of different kinds of
Yeah,
teas that we're exposed to. Everyone just goes for the generic Earl Grey,
yeah.
English breakfast, and I know that there's a whole different kind of teas in your cultures, not even in yours, and mine as well, like Ceylon tea. Like there's so many different kinds, and it's just interesting to see how
And
it's
there's
just.
one really popular one in India too. It's called spice tea. I was actually in one of the events which I hosted, a cricket World Cup showcasing Pakistan and India, and there were
Yeah.
some members there who actually brought in a spicy tea. It was such a different taste, yet it was still, a tea or tasty. It was just spices added to it. So you can imagine, like, even living in Canada, you can cross link with other cultures and try different sort of tea or other flavors of food.
Yeah, like Shenzi mentioned, like the spices in these foods, like we also put those spices in teas. Like I know a lot of my family members put like cardamom, that
Hmm.
spice that we
My
put in
dad
a
is
lot of.
pretty, he loves those, but I hate it
Exactly.
personally.
And
Yeah,
cardamom is
personally,
a
I can't
staple
handle
in.
it.
Yeah, I
Yeah, it's a
can't stand it.
staple in many of these like Indian foods.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
cool.
I would say even in Pakistani culture, I know Shanze would agree. They normally put in cardamom in it, and you can't
They
really
do.
avoid it. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
You definitely have to speak up and say, please, not for me.
yeah.
And
Before you
everyone will
put,
look at you a
just
little
take mine
weird.
out. Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. And you know what's really even more interesting? Since I went up north here in Pakistan, I was able to experience a little bit more traditional way of life as it's a bit more rural. And because we wanted to go see the most beautiful places in Pakistan, guys, it's very underrated. It's absolutely beautiful. And as you can see on the top left, they have the tea served in it's like it's made of clay. So it's a
Hmm.
clay cup. And that's typically the way that people here drink it. And it's how it's
Hmm.
supposed to be drank. And I don't know how it made the flavor that much better and the experience even. It was
Hmm.
so fun to sit around. We actually sat around a fire and we had Pakistani music in the back. And it was all about family, sitting together, drinking tea, connecting with each other, phones nowhere in sight because you're just having
Hmm.
such a great time, having laughs. That is what
That's what you want food to be about, nutrition
Hmm.
aside. It's very crucial that you find your identity with it, as well
Yeah.
as community, as well as connecting with others. And that's what I find food to be for me.
My follow-up question will be for tea would be, have you tried Kashmiri tea, or they call it pink tea?
Yes, so actually, pink tea, my mother-in-law makes it as she's Kashmiri. She makes it very, very authentically, and it tastes so delicious. It's again from a different place since it's from Kashmir, but
Hmm.
you find those things more available. You can still find that kind of tea in Canada,
Yeah.
which is really amazing that they've been able to introduce things like that that make it easier for us to feel like we're at home.
Hmm.
That's why I absolutely love the diversity that we have in regards to foods, cultures, and
Hmm.
it's easy access for everyone.
Interesting. Now we'll want to go back to the my first question to Shanze, is that, like, what factors have contributed to women being pushed into a private sphere of home?
So that's a very good question because I did want to touch on that. So all this food that you have seen presented to you was most likely, if it was cooked at home, was by the women of the house, right? We
Hmm.
still have that really stark division between public and private, in which the public sphere is for the man. He has to go out, be the breadwinner, and it's really, really constricted to that. While on the other hand, the woman has to stay home, take care of the kids, make the food, make sure that everything is running smoothly. And I feel like in this day and age, it should move past that restriction. If a woman wants to go out and work, she should be able to. If she wants to go and pursue her education further, she should be able to. If a man wants to stay home and cook, why not? Right? I feel like it's a really, really important step that us as a culture we need to take, because again, as I'm living here, I can really see that that distinction still exists. I was shocked to see how prevalent it still is, because you would assume with the times people would evolve, but
Mm-hmm.
it really hasn't. Like, they're still trying to make sure that I learn how to cook properly before I go home, as I'll be
Mm-hmm.
getting married soon. So it's really, really interesting to see that that distinction is still there. And I think it's time to move past that and break those cultural barriers that prevent you from succeeding, from going further
Mm-hmm.
beyond the limits that have been set out for you.
Yeah, definitely. I will just build upon that because I totally understand since I'm from Pakistan as well. It's more of so cultural thing. Maybe it's all over South Asia, but religion does not really stop you to, do your chores. I think religion actually tells you to, men and women are equal, so they need to, abide by whatever their duties are at home or outside. So I'm still shocked to hear your recent experiences in Pakistan. Hopefully, millennials like us in next decade or so, things will move on to further how it should be.
And I don't want to like narrow it down to Pakistan. This definitely still exists abroad. It exists in Canada. It exists everywhere. It's still a thing that we need to work on achieving. And again, Talha, I agree with you that us millennials, it's our responsibility to break those barriers and make sure that we achieve the change we want to see. So,
Uh,
sorry, moving on to my next last bit that I do want to discuss before we run out of time is the month of Ramadan. So that is a very sacred, holy month for us. It is 30 days long of us fasting. And as Leah had said, fasting, even for them, for their culture, is a very crucial part of healing, of your spirituality, your religion. So for us, we start actually in a few days. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
mhm,
It's starting on, for me, it's going to be Wednesday most likely, and over in Canada, probably around Tuesday. And
mhm,
in this month, we observe fasts, and in that way we are able to connect with food on a different level, where we set it aside, where we see how people that don't have it feel and what they're going through. It's a month of reflection, right? You get to see the flip side, so you appreciate that food even more. And in that month we have different types of food, which is really exciting. We have like samosas, we have rolls, we have like very delicious, decadent food during that month as a reward for fasting for the whole day. So, again, really excited for that coming up. It's going to be again in a few days. So, I just wanted to make a quick mention of why it's so significant to us.
No, definitely not just in Pakistan. It's like observed all around the world. There are over 1.8 billion Muslims, and even from my early age, from my childhood, I used to fast, try to fast, like for 30 days, because I really want to, uh, understand how other poor people might go through, and especially in countries like Africa, where the access of food is not widely available. And we try to do a lot more charity in this month as well. And we try to connect with the God, go to mosque, pray. But unfortunately, from past a year, we have not really able to go into a mosque and do our religious things. But hopefully, very soon, in few months, we might be able to do so. This will lead me to my last question to Shanze, is that how has that led to their subjugation to men?
So, because men and women have been historically divided, this tradition of keeping women at home and ensuring that they stay there and take care of all the domesticated things, it really pushes them aside, and it doesn't allow them to progress, and it doesn't allow them to proceed in whatever they may want. So it
Hmm.
ensures that they stay below men because it ensures their inferiority, as
Hmm.
men will have the financial stability because they're able to go in the work to work, and they're able to have that, and financial stability usually translates to some type of power. So
Hmm.
that really is a core concept when it comes to talking about power, subjugation, and equality. So again, on a lighter note, I do think we're making progress, but definitely always room to improve. So hopefully, as we have talked about, us millennials really have that responsibility to move forward.
All right. Thank you so much, Shanze, to giving us your thought
No
about the
problem.
Pakistani culture and the food and religion and whatnot. So I would like to thank all of my three guests who were invited to the panel. It was quite interesting for me and especially for the audience to hear all these concepts coming in from South Asian countries and trying to connect that with Western countries and even indigenous and whatnot. So once again, I will really want to thank each and every one for coming in and putting in your precious time and giving us your opinion on specific cultures. And I look forward to having another discussion in some other podcast as well. So once again, thank you so much to everyone. And any final comments from each guest, if you guys want to comment, you can definitely do so now.
Thank you for being such a great host, Belha.
Thank you very much. It was my
And a
pleasure.
great time on your show.
Yeah, for sure. I really enjoyed everybody's comments and opinions, and I'm definitely leaving today with a more open mind in different cultures, and I just feel more educated. And also, I feel like I'm not living a separate life. It's like we all live the same life, and I think that's really cool.
And it's super
Definitely.
cool to see how we all of our cultures, even though we're like from completely different places, we all kind of share and connect the same thing.
For sure.
Definitely. All right. Thank you so much to all my guests, and also thank you to all of our audience for tuning in and listening to this podcast. Please don't forget to give us a feedback on our social media channels, and also join us next week with a new episode of the podcast. Have a good day and take care. Be safe.
Bye.
Bye.